that's the most important part. There's no kind of like shirking that part. I think a lot of people just skip that step and are just like, I don't want to do all that work. Like, we're just going to go with the incumbent because like no one's going to get fired for going with the incumbent. I'm basically just a data nerd. Specifically, when I say data, I mean into be contacts and company information. Charm.io. I started at Microsoft, out of college, and now started ExecBuyer. A PM at OneNote, Discover.org, which is now ZoomInfo. One of the first data engineers there, first data scientist, People Data Labs. I went to Gorgeous after that. There's other inefficiencies, which is just kind of like we mentioned, like just throwing a bunch of people onto a list and just like letting it ride. Even if it doesn't work, it's just like you have to wait maybe 2-3 months for you to get through that entire list, right? So if you're not prioritizing those people, like now, hopefully you get sales, but you won't know, for another 3 months, what the total outcome of that will be. I think those are the issues. But in terms of cold email, not warming up domains enough, I think is definitely one, or being overzealous, with new campaigns. I think that's definitely one. There's advanced things that you can do, like using multiple different domains. So you can use execbuyer.org, execbuyer.net, execbuyer.io, and then round robin, even within a single campaign, to use those. You can even take it a step further and do some, we're experimenting with this right now, but we're actually using GPT-3 to automate sending and personalizing emails. So you can do that based on the data that we have, right, about someone. I know someone's a VP of sales. I look at their about me, right, and I could take that information on LinkedIn and then also look at their skills and the languages they speak and where they live. And if I was a SDR and needed to craft this message, I'd have to really think about all those things and then tie that into the first sentence or two of what I'm sending. Now you have machines that can do it just as well, if not better, and at scale. Because now it doesn't look as similar every time you send an email, right? So it's not like the algorithm that Google's using is not saying like, hey, like we recognize that all they're changing are company name and first name in this email, but everything is exactly the same. You can set the weights to basically be, more different, right? Or you can make it more creative every single email, which can make it seem more of what, a natural human in theory would do. But in reality, someone who's an SDR who has to send 120 emails a day is probably not being hyper personalized either. When it comes to cold emails, specifically talking about emails, there's a couple major metrics that we look at. You're looking at bounce rates. So first, deliverability, how many actually get into the domain. You really want to have super high deliverability. It should be like 97% or higher. If it's lower than that, either you're having some troubles with your domain, and maybe you should take a look at some internal tooling. But you should really get high rates of deliverability. In terms of the validity of the email addresses, there's oftentimes you're going to get from different vendors like probable email addresses, which means basically that data vendor like guessed at an email and just said like, yeah, we think this is it. Go for it. You try and let us know. And so that, there are certain data vendors that take that approach and they sell data for super cheap. But then you're going to see, 15 to 20% bounce rates or higher. And then very quickly your campaign's going to fizzle out. Right. So what I think, something that we see when we use our own data, we dog food our own data, we're seeing like 2.5% bounce rates or lower. I think you want to be below 3% is typically a benchmark that I hear, if you can, but it's harder to get below 3% than I think a lot of people think. But I think anywhere below that, you're in a pretty solid range. When it comes to reply rates, I mean, I think that really depends on like how the copy of the offer, but I think still mostly how targeted you are, right? It's like you can send someone a pretty shitty message, but if they're really looking for your API and there's like only one other on the market, like they'll probably take the call. And I have to admit, I've always been terrible at the copy and the message and the imagery and everything. I've only been good at the data part, so that's kind of why I stuck to that, and I let other people help me with the other parts. Yeah, I think it's getting harder than ever, to be honest, to sort of run these tests, and we run them all the time as part of our evaluation phase with customers. I think the best thing is just like try to get some data from each of them, even if you need to pay like a couple $100, whatever it is. Like the investment ultimately that you're going to make in your sales and marketing, the amount that you're going to spend on a couple $100 test is like totally insignificant. So I always tell people like spend the time up front to like really do a legitimate test. you can always run them through known sort of email bouncers. There's tools that allow you to basically upload lists where you can see how many of those emails are actually valid, meaning they'll be deliverable, go to the mail server through the mail server. You can ask them about verification. You can have people just actually make the phone calls, right, for phone numbers and see on a list of 100, what's the accuracy. I think that's the most important part. There's no kind of like shirking that part. I think a lot of people just skip that step and are just like, I don't want to do all that work. Like, we're just going to go with the incumbent because like no one's going to get fired for going with the incumbent. So I think that's what you'll typically find. And I think, I've seen lots of companies succeed with the volume game. I'm not to knock the volume game. I think that's also super important. But I think ultimately, you're going to burn through all of your leads, and hopefully you don't do that with too much of a bad taste in people's mouth. So I think you need to be kind of a little nuanced when you do that.